What happened? Yeah. So before we get started, I have a bit of a dilemma, right? So at home, I get to hone my listening skills. My wife gets to do most of the talking. Whereas here, I've got closed doors, about 100 people, a captive audience. I know it's a long day. You've been working pretty hard. What do I do? Okay. So we'll try and keep it short, okay? So here's the first thing. We're going to talk about DevOps, we're going to talk about Agile. It's a closing note. But I first want to ask, how many of you listen to rock music? Or have listened in the past? Any Bon Jovi fans here? Okay. Wait, let me. So, any Aerosmith fans here, by the way? Okay, great. So this really, I don't know, I get to see two different things here. I don't know which ones you see out there. Do you see both Bon Jovi and Aerosmith, or you see only one of them? Yeah, I am on presentation mode. Yeah, some reason it seems to be, hold on, see. When I put on full screen.
You can.
Yeah, I know why.
It seems it's working.
It's working there? Okay. So fundamentally, this describes GE's DevOps and Agile journey. We started by being Bon Jovi artists, and the DevOps journey initially was largely the one that was living on a prayer, right? And now where we're hoping to get to is more Aerosmithish, right? We want to be living on the edge with respect to both cultural practices as well as how we go about doing our work. So that's fundamentally what the next 30 minutes is about. Okay. And what I want you guys to take away at the end of this talk is not just look for words of wisdom from me. What I'm about to do in the next 30 minutes is really share our experiences as a company and my personal experiences in the last 17 plus years that we've been going through this journey. And I'm hoping that you guys, as part of your questions, also share your experiences and what's not worked. Okay, that's really what we want to do here. Because the value of these forums is not just what we speak on this side of the stage, but what we learn from each other and from your peers. So I'm hoping to make it really engaging and interactive. Now, why bother? I think in the panel discussion, we spoke about what is things that we don't believe should be changing, vis-a-vis stuff that should be changing. And to me, and I talked about a Venn diagram, which is a basic philosophy around which GE operates. So when we started this transformation journey, so I joined in August of last year, and we created an agility and a DevOps work stream. We have some of the folks in the audience here who are key leaders of that. I've been our friends, one of them. What we wanted to do was start by asking why. Why do we want to take on this large-scale transformation of about 1,600 people globally? So we are part of imaging, which is half of GE Healthcare. So, and we've got centers in about at least 8 or 9 different locations globally. Why is this worth doing? Right? What is the opportunity cost of not doing this? Because GE Healthcare is a growing, successful company. It's an entity that's been exceeding its revenue profitability targets. So why fix something that ain't broke, like we just said, right? And so when we got down to answering that question, before we make a non-trivial investment of our employees, our stakeholders' time, we said, what are the fundamental things that we believe don't change, right? And these are the key outcomes. We speak about speed, but it's really velocity. What's the difference between speed and velocity? Yeah. So speed without direction fundamentally can take you anywhere and nowhere at the same time. And that's what we want to avoid, right? So if you do want to increase velocity, and velocity can mean different things to different people, but what we zeroed in on was the ability to improve productivity and internal productivity for our developers, and most importantly, change the developer experience. By developer, we also mean the folks who do automation, right? Significantly better than what it has been in the past. It's also about how our customers view our release maturity. So that's another key metric that we want to measure and improve upon. And last but not least, our ability to automate anything that can be automatable, as well as fundamentally improve our velocity of being able to respond when our customers ask for something new. So that's really what we call velocity. And the stuff on the left are things that don't change, right? Regardless of whether it's DevOps, Agile, or not, those things will be true 100 years from now as it has been 100 years ago. And GE's got a history of more than 100 years. Right, so those are the timeless pieces on the left. The stuff on the right is what's changing. Right? When it comes to quality, again, we are in the healthcare space, so we do literally touch people's lives. The cost of being wrong is inordinately high. So the question is, can we do something that allows us to increase velocity, but without impacting consistent quality? And if possible, GE already sets a pretty high bar, as is most of the healthcare companies in the space, for obvious reasons. Can you improve on the fairly high bar that we already set? Right, so that's fundamentally another big objective and key imperative that we're going to. At the same time, we are a large organization, like globally dispersed. How do you make sure you have consistency in how you operate, and how do you cross-pollinate best practices across all different parts of the business, right? So that's another key requirement. Finally, some things that are changing is we have a thriving ecosystem of startups and third-party companies that are making a big impact in healthcare. Right. So what we do want to do as an entity that's been largely successful is embrace this trend. So part of the reason we decided to invest in DevOps and Agile is to be able to create a platform, not just for our internal developers to be able to get a frictionless experience, but also make onboarding for these third-party application developers and healthcare providers to be able to work with us in a way that is not symptomatic of a large, bureaucratic but successful company. Right? These are really the three objectives, which answers the why. Why do we want to invest in this? And being able to change, what does this require? This requires us to both change the cultural ethos of the company, as well as invest in technologies and tools that make a difference. Hence, the start of the transformation journey. Okay? So any questions on this one? Now that's all great and dandy, but we did learn a few things along the way. Like I said, we started about a couple of years ago, but formally kicked off the DevOps work stream in November. And what do you think was the first thing we did when we started the work stream? We said, okay, this is great, this is our objectives, now let's go hammer and tongs. We got the buy-in right from the top leadership. We told the teams, go all out, we're going to go all in here. Right? So what do you think we did? Any ideas, any questions? Come on, I'm not going to let you listen. I know it's, unless somebody's distributing popcorn out there. What do you think we did? Okay, so let me answer. Sorry? We did analyze process, yes. We also decided to hire a lot of Agile DevOps experts. We've got a few in the room. Right. And we hired quite a lot of them, because as an organization we believed that was something that was necessary to do. We didn't have the expertise that it takes to make this huge cultural transformation happen. And why do I call that a misunderstanding? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that was a bad idea. What was a bad idea though is focusing on this before focusing on democratizing knowledge of why this is important to the larger organization. Okay, so I come from the healthcare space, but you don't need to be a healthcare expert to answer this question. If the body is not prepared properly and you do an organ transplant, what happens to the organ? Who rejects it? Yeah. So that's exactly what happens when you bring in the expert, in this case is the foreign object, the organ, with the right intentions, right? If you've not prepared the body, right? That is the misunderstanding I'm referring to. Right? So we did bring in a lot of DevOps architects, we brought in Agile coaches, we brought in senior architects, but what do they do when they come in? Did we prepare them for success? I think the answer was no. They came in, the organization wasn't ready, there was passive-aggressive resistance of the sort I alluded to in the panel discussion. People said, look, we build CT machines, MRI machines, you can't fail fast, right? I can't give you half a machine in the first sprint and go ship it to a customer. We build engines. Would you fly an airplane where the engine is in its first sprint and we'll iterate and we'll fix problems as we go along? So what are we going to do with you? So that was something that we learned, and then we started to invest more in being able to both debunk certain cultural myths around what Agile and what DevOps is, and democratize this and across the larger cross-section of the organization, right from the leadership. Right? It starts right from the top, all the way down to the front. And this is work in progress. I don't think you should walk away with the illusion that this is a closed chapter. This is very much work in progress even as we speak. Right? We do this every day when we get up. So that's exactly one thing that we believe was a learning. And you can tell me if this resonates with some of you. Right? So a formal DevOps requirement is it's necessary but not sufficient to solve the problem of large-scale cultural transformation. So that's one. Secondly, we touched upon this earlier, right? Agile is not for safety-focused cultures and industries. So this was, again, another big source of pushback, both within the organization, right? Again, very similar arguments. Hey, we are not in the, pick something, a video game business. Cost of doing wrong is extremely high. You can't play with patients' lives. You can't fail fast, etc., etc. And that's where a lot of time was now spent on training, coaching, right from leaders to managers, and in some cases we had to make hard calls about, even if these people were doing very, very well, it's easy to make a transformation if you didn't have to make hard calls. Anybody would do it. I think where it gets interesting is if you've got to confront yourself with hard choices around, here's a set of people who are doing really well in the current setup. You're trying to institutionalize large-scale change. At what point do you say, look, we've tried to coach you, we've tried to work with you, you either have to fall in line or you need to get out of the way for the larger good. Like they say, right, to make an omelet, you do have to break some eggs. So that's kind of what I think is another key thing that we've got to learn. Right. So what we're really talking about here is not necessarily shipping half an engine or shipping half a scanner in the first sprint. That's not what Agile is about, right? What Agile is really about is focusing again on the pathological elements within an organization that shoot the messenger. We got off a meeting this morning with a lot of managers where one of the key recurring themes that was coming up is a lot of times we talk about candor, and we do value it genuinely now. Right from the CEO, we've been talking about candor. But it doesn't help if you have information radiators, which Agile allows you to provide, that speaks the truth, and you shoot the messenger. Right, so which is a pathological culture, which doesn't lend itself well to successful Agile or DevOps adoption. So how do you move from pathological to probably bureaucratic, where you're not shooting the messenger, but you're tolerating them, right? That's a step forward, but not as good as it gets. To a generative model, where you are encouraging disconfirming evidence. So if you believe you're doing great, you're actively seeking out people who are telling you, no, it's not as green as it looks, right? And what these things do is they make it easier for the truth to funnel out. The other thing that I want to highlight is, at some point in the past, a lot of large companies are extremely slideware or PowerPoint focused. A lot of the status updates are PowerPoint heavy, right? And one of the things that you do here is you're trying to get rid of status via PowerPoint. I'm not saying PowerPoint is bad. I mean, I do a lot of it. I earn a living making PowerPoint, including this one. But what I'm really trying to say is, for stuff that's quantifiable, use information radiators, which is what Agile allows you to do, to speak the truth, so that you can have an honest discussion on what to do to fix it. Right? And that's really what this is about. Right? The third big myth that we had was, okay, great, now we've invested in this, we've brought people on board, we've done all these trainings. When we ask people to describe what's your definition of success, what do you want to look forward to when this is done? What do you think is going to change for you as an engineer, for you as a manager, for you as a leader, as a VP, or whatever you may be, right? And most people's understanding of what Agile DevOps, if successfully implemented, would do was, hey, you know what? Now I'm going to be able to deploy 10 times in production in a day. That was a fundamental understanding of what this brings to the table. And that's not really all there is to Agile and DevOps. It was something that we did spend a lot of time educating people on. That yes, you will be able to deploy more frequently than you have in the past, but hey, that number is going to vary dramatically depending on how well you executed on the previous two things that we spoke about. So high-performing teams with leadership that tolerates and encourages dissenting behavior and truth, even if it's not great, would really perform significantly better on multiple parameters.